Hey everybody, this is Poppy with Poppy's Wiggling Wigglers and Castings, and today we're out in nature out here on the farm, as you can hear by the background noises possibly, and you may even see them pop up in the screen. So if any of those crazy animals that live out here show up, I apologize in advance. But with that being said, today what we're going to be doing is showing you how to use your bucket of worms to start creating your own castings and vermicompost at home. Each bucket comes with a feed by date, and that's today's date. Now, if you're not interested in growing your own worms, starting your own vermicompost, or creating your own castings, but you use castings or you want to use them, we've already done the hard work for you, and we process about right now 1,000 pounds every 2 weeks. And we bag those in a way that's convenient for you at an affordable price, all the way from our 20-pound, 10, 5 pound, and we've also got a 2-pound worm tea kit mix that you can use. And then our famous worm tea brewing kit comes with your aeration pump, your molasses, your dangle stick, your 2 bags for holding your castings, and you can get these with a 5-pound or a 10-pound bag. So we've got those available. But right now, again, today we're here to talk about Poppy's bucket of worms. And again, today is the feed by date, and so we're going to show you how to do that. And so we appreciate you tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this demonstration. And if you get a bucket of your own, refer back to this video to see exactly what we're doing. And there will also be directions posted in the subject section of this video that you'll be able to download and print. With that being said, let's get started. So to get started, you've got your bucket of worms. First thing we're going to do is remove the top. Now, these tops don't have a seal, and you don't want a seal in your bucket if you're using your own bucket. Make sure you're using a bucket that does not have a rubber seal. That's to allow air to get around that. Also, of course, some worms could sneak out because they like to get sneaky. It's going to be a little bit more controllable in this particular container. Now again, this is our single bucket. This is how we currently raise our worms, and there's no reason why you can't use the same bucket using the same method. And so I like this method. We also have a double bucket method that you can use. Some people like that as well. I'm going to show you both, but right now we're going to focus on using the single bucket. Now, when you get your bucket of worms, this is a half a bucket right now. We're doing this for illustration purposes, but it is their feed by date. So we, instead of giving it 2 weeks worth of feed, we just gave them 1 week's worth of feed. Normally, when we're going to go ahead and create our bedding for our worms to transfer them, and we're going to create enough bedding that we can fill it up underneath this, or we'll fill it halfway so that we can continue to add fresh bedding over the next few weeks till they're ready to be harvested. So with that, we're going to start our bedding. Now, I'm gonna, in the description of this video, you will find what they like to eat, okay, and what we recommend, as well as what they don't like to eat and what you shouldn't use. But all the products that we're using today are what we recommend in using for your cultured night crawlers. Now, this is sorghum peat moss. It's very easy to control the moisture. It's very inexpensive, and it's similar to the bedding that these worms have been raised in. And so you can use coca-coir, very expensive. You can use compost if you've got a quality compost, or you can use this peat moss. It's, again, very inexpensive, and I'll put a link in the description to this video with, you know, the ones that we use, but again, you can buy them at your local Tractor Supply or your local farm store. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to wet our bedding, and this is the most critical part of setting up your worm bin, okay, is the moisture content. A lot of videos and a lot of people that you see raising worms, they will use a 3-bucket system to allow that 3rd bucket to catch the moisture that's coming in from your compost and the things that you're putting in while you're feeding them. But here's what I can tell you. You shouldn't need that third bucket because your bedding shouldn't be that wet. Your bedding should be no wetter that when you squeeze it, that just a tiny bit of moisture comes out in between your fingers. So if your bedding is proper, your worms are going to be healthier, they're going to eat more, they're going to thrive more, and you're not going to have all of that wasted product or the liquid, because you can use your compost, your worm castings, to create a worm casting tea like we do with our system here. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to wet this peat moss, and again, it's just sorghum peat moss. So we're going to add some water. We're going to mix it together until we get that consistency that we're looking for. And again, we don't want it wet, we just want it moist. Okay. These little sprayers are sure handy to have when you're working around your garden if you don't have access to your garden hose. If you're out someplace in your garden, these are really nice to have. All right. Now, we're going to mix this together, work this together. Add a little more water. All right, that's coming together great. Now the next thing we're going to add is some cardboard and some newspaper. Now you can get by without using this, obviously, and just use cardboard, newspaper, and all of that, but this is definitely going to give you a much better bedding for your worms. You're going to get a much better casting, but either way, works all the same. Now, you want to make sure that you just, if you've got a paper shredder or you've got somebody that's got one, you can shred this stuff, it's better. Newspaper is easy for them to consume, so you want to just break it down, tear it down. Same thing with the cardboard. Make sure you're using a cardboard that's recyclable. And all nowadays with all the inks are safe, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. So now if you don't have newspaper, you don't get it. Most stores that you go into, depending on where you live, they'll have some kind of a little handout paper up front that has auto sales in it or advertising or something. And we just pick those up as what we do and use that. So I'm going to just rip up a little bit more, not waste my whole time or yours, because I will be adding some more bedding to this later. Now I've already got one set up with bedding in our dual system there, and I will show that to you. Fantastic. Oh, it's looking great. So now this is a little wet, but I'm going to add some more cardboard. I can add some more paper to it, and it will absorb that. Now you have to be careful when you're adding coffee grounds and your vegetables and things like that. That's normally where all that moisture is going to come from. And so, you know, we like to make sure that if it's things that we're going to put in our compost bucket, we kind of set that stuff aside and make sure that it's not over soaked. So I'm going to show you what we've got here today. We've got some potatoes, some green beans, some lettuce that we have collected as we've made our salads and everything. Now what we've done is we've diced that up. Here's what's important for your worms. The smaller the pieces, the easier it is for them to consume it. Okay, so you want to make sure, again, that you tear your paper up, all your bedding, as well as any of the feed that you're adding to your mix. Now, I've got some coffee grounds, eggshells, Even a tea bag in here, believe it or not, they like that. Got some green beans. Man, I tell you what, this is going to be some absolutely healthy castings. Now, again, you can follow the list of do's and don'ts, what you need. You know, some greens, some browns, right? But make sure you follow that directions, and again, they'll be in the subject of this video. You guys, now it's really looking good. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful bedding. So that's it. We have our bedding prepared. As you can see here, see how beautiful that is. Set that aside. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to process our castings. And so here's the cool thing about buying Poppy's bucket of worms. When your feed buy date comes, you're not only going to have a bucket of worms, but you're going to have a bucket of castings, pure castings, just like they were when they went into our system before they got put into the bag. So that's the benefit of starting off with our wiggling wigglers. Now, these are what we call cultured nightcrawlers. The cultured nightcrawler is a worm that has been raised in captivity, and they were bred from African nightcrawlers. They're massive, big, beautiful worms. Now, here's the advantages to African nightcrawlers, is they produce the largest castings and the most herbaceous breeders. And so from a commercial standpoint, when you're trying to produce the most castings and the purest castings, this is the type of worm we use. Now, we use an organic soil. We use all organic grains. We don't use this particular method. This method is strictly used for your home bin. But again, when you get your bucket, you're going to end up with a bucket full of castings and some vermicompost. So we're going to show you how to do that. Now, you can do this in any method. We use these plastic containers. You could put them into your wheelbarrow, whatever the case may be. But I'm going to show you what we do. Now, we're going to set this aside for a second, and we're going to put our new bedding in the bucket, and then we'll add our worms to it. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and show you how we separate our castings from our worms. This just makes it easier when you're moving your worms. You don't have to do this. You can just simply pull your worms out and transfer them, okay? But I'm going to show you a method that you can use to make it a little bit easier. Now, this is what they call hardware cloth. It's 1/4 inch. This is, I think I built these 18 by 24, and I built them to fit this tub, okay? So you can build yours however. You can build them to work in your wheelbarrow, right, to go over your wheelbarrow. But I'll show you how we do it. So I'm going to dump our vermicompost and worms in here. Then I'm going to shake it down, and look at this, you guys. Just a little bit left in here, and the only thing that left in here is the hypnum, which is like your peat moss that came in our soil. Again, our soil is organic, about 43% organic matter. So the castings you're going to get are just going to be fantastic. So now we're going to go ahead and dump the rest in. And again, this is the feed buy date. So this only thing left in there is going to be worms, castings, and very little vermicompost. Transfer this over. And you guys, this is pure worm castings. This comes with each bucket of Poppy's Wiggling Wigglers and castings. So this is going to be your first batch of castings that you're going to produce in your bucket. How crazy is that? Look at that. you're going to end up with about 3 or 4 pounds of castings in your bucket. Now I'm going to go ahead and separate these massive compost worms. Now these compost worms, look at this, over 8 inches. These are full grown. These are not breeders. That does not mean they won't lay eggs, okay? But they're not going to be laying as many as they do when they're young. These are to create vermicompost and castings, and that's what this video is about. All right, fantastic. Crazy, crazy, crazy. All right, there you go. Now this is just a half a bucket, again, not a full bucket. So this whole thing would be full of these castings. And again, this is the same thing that's in our bags. And you'll be able to make worm casting tea out of it. Go ahead and add it to your home plants, your house plants. Follow the directions on our website, the culturednightcrawler.com/directions, and you can download them. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and set that aside for now. Now we're going to take that bedding that we created, and we're going to now put it into your bucket that you received your worms in. And all we're going to do is start that process all over again. And again, you're going to want to make enough bedding to do about half the bucket, or you can do the full amount. But if you make a half a bucket, you can continue to add some until it gets up below the air hole rings here before you run it and separate it. Now, if you're not going to separate your castings from your soil, you don't really need to do that, right? You're just going to go ahead and run it on your 1/4 inch screen and separate your worms from it, and then add them into your new bedding. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this up good. Make sure it's not too wet. And again, as you're adding some coffee grounds and things like that over the next couple weeks, you're going to want to make sure that you don't get it too wet. Again, so that's why I got gloves on here. I'm going to pick it up and squeeze it. You can see I've got a little moisture coming out of it, and that's going to be okay. Your worms, you know, they're between 70 and 80% water, and so they need moisture. But if they get too much moisture, then they're going to drown, right? And if you don't have enough, they're going to use all their own body moisture in order to create the moisture they need. Then they're just going to go away. Too wet, they'll rot. Look at this, guys. How awesome. I'm going to go ahead and put these up and let those crawl out, and they will crawl down into their bedding, to the tub here. Alrighty, I'll separate those. Alright. Finish adding them. Now with this method, again, this is a single bucket method. That's all you have to do. You're done. Just put the lid back on it. Now, I like to mix the worms into the bedding, distribute them throughout the bedding. You're going to see a lot of blue colors in there. That's because, again, they're bred from the Aftrican Nightcrawler. That's what makes them fluorescent or purple. These are massive worms, so they eat a lot. And so you're going to get the benefit of these. Look at this. You're going to get the benefit of these ferocious eaters. And now you guys are going to be able to produce your own castings, your own vermicompost for your garden, for your raised beds. Give it to your friends, whatever it is that you choose to do with it. But it's going to be awesome, and you're going to love it. Put your lid back on it. Now, with this bucket, you can leave this anywhere where it's not going to be too hot or too cold. They've got to be above 60 degrees, okay? And they're comfortable at 70 and 80 degrees. You want good ventilation in the area that you're putting them. As long as the lid's on it, you're not going to have a problem with them escaping. You will have that on the dual system, so we recommend leaving the lights on, and I'll show you how to do that utilizing our bucket to create this system versus this one. Again, this may be the easiest because we're done, guys. That's all there is to it. Just make your bedding, separate your vermicomposting castings. As you can see here, how beautiful that is. And then you're ready to rock and roll. Just put it to the side. Now, if you want to use a dual system, I'm going to show you how to do that utilizing an extra bucket. And you can just get your bucket of worms, okay, Poppy's bucket of worms, and take any food grade 5-gallon bucket. The advantage of this system over using 2 5-gallon buckets, ours doesn't go down, so you'll get a better seal here around the top, and it gives you more room underneath for bedding. Okay, so you're going to have about the same amount of bedding that you will have with this, and it won't be all the way to the bottom. Now, all you're going to do is take your bucket, and again, our compost buckets, either using the single system or this, they're already ventilated and ready to rock and roll. If you want to make a second bucket system, get you a 1/2-inch drill bit and drill a 1/2-inch hole all the way around your bucket, just like you can see what I've done here. I also took some 1/4-inch and drilled 1/4-inch holes in the bottom. That'll allow any of that moisture to seep out and drop it down into the bottom bucket. Now, all you're going to do is the same thing you're going to do first is process your casting. So you've got a feed by date, that's today. So we're going to process our castings just like we did with a single bucket system, okay? So let's take first. This has got this I've already dumped it over, so when you get your worms, in this case, you're going to get them on your feed by date. You're going to just take and process them, and then you're going to put your bedding down inside here, and once it's ready to be processed, you're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to show you what to do. Again, we've created our bucket. You've got this bucket that comes with your worms. Now, since we've already transferred our castings when we got them into this bottom bucket. Remember, you get your worms, you're going to take it home, you're going to transfer them to your 5-gallon bucket, okay? You're going to put your top in like this after you drill your holes in it. You're going to mix up your bedding just like we did in the other video, and then you're going to add it to the top. Now, here's what's going to happen. As they run out of bedding in the bottom, in other words, they eat it up, they're going to start moving up in the bucket, and they're going to get up here to the top, and they're going to come through these holes, and you can see there's already worms in here, okay? Some we've put in, but some have already crawled out because, as you will see, they're running out of food by their feed by date. They're ready to move, they're ready to find more food, and that's when they're most active. And the more active they are, the more they're going to bump into each other. The more they bump into each other, the more cocoons they lay, and then they lay eggs, and then they hatch, and then those hatches become more worms. So how cool is that? Again, these are compost worms. These are not breeder worms, but of course some will still be laying eggs. So now all we're going to do is process. This is our castings that we received that we dumped out of here originally. We're going to go ahead and process these just like we did the others, okay? And then we're going to add the bedding to this. Again, each bucket comes with about 225 to 250 worms. And that's these big, beautiful monster cultured nightcrawlers. Look at that. These things love to eat, and they're getting ready to get their opportunity. Go ahead and dump those out. Get these last couple out of here. So now, we have processed the worm castings that you received with your original bucket. So you've got a full bucket, you guys, of worm castings and vermicompost. And as you can see, it's almost 100% castings. How cool is that? Same thing again that comes in our bags. And a little bit more pure because we get a little bit more of the stuff out, but I'm not doing it in this illustration. You can run that back through an 1/8" screen, and this 1/8" screen will move any of the vermicompost, the dirt that was left in there, out. So primarily, the only thing that will go through this 1/8" screen at that point is just going to be the pure castings. So if you wanted to do that, you can screen it a second time with an 1/8" screen and separate those castings. So now we have our worms separated, and we're going to take our bucket, okay? We're going to dump our bedding that we made into the bucket. We're going to add our worms. We're going to mix them in good. Make sure your bedding's the right moisture content, that it's not too wet or too dry. You can add water to this if you need to. If you're adding some coffee grounds and things like that, typically it'll kind of keep it moist enough. But if not, you can use a spray can, a spray bottle. And make sure you're only using purified water, rainwater, well water. You can buy it, boil it, let it cool down, obviously. But make sure you're not using city water ever on your worms, okay? No chlorinated. Also, no water that has gone through a water softener, okay? So if you have a water softener in your house, you'll need to make sure that you separate that and let that salt condense down out of your water. All right, with that being said, that's all there is to it. You're going to make another batch of bedding, okay, over the next 2 weeks and fill up in here. Again, in this system, these worms down here, that while they're consuming their food, they're going to rise up when they run out, and they're going to start moving into the top bucket that has your new bedding in it, okay? And then 2 weeks later or 3, again, take your lid off, check your worms periodically, make sure they've got plenty of feed, and you're going to just keep doing that process over and over again. So again, the single bucket system or the dual bucket, and again, you can add a third bucket by drilling holes in the bottom of this one, sending it down in, and if you got too much moisture, it will drain into that bucket. If you're creating that much moisture, it's not a healthy environment for your worms. It's going to create flies, gnats, all different kinds of stuff. So I would make sure that, again, you keep your content moisture correct. You guys, that's all there is to it. It's not complicated. It's not hard. It's very simple. So if you like the single bucket system, again, you're going to get your buckets on the feed by date. You're going to process your worms and castings out. You're going to add your new bedding to it, put your worms back in, put the lid on it. You're good to go. And then just check them, a couple times throughout the week. Hope you enjoyed that. If you find it informative, make sure you subscribe to our channel, like it, and share it. It really makes a big difference. And we need your help. We appreciate you so much. And we hope you enjoy your castings and your worms and your happy gardening. Thanks.